What's up, everybody? It is Steve Wolf here from Bulk Goodly, and today we're talking all about branding. The word brand or the term branding gets thrown around a lot these days in the social media verse, and I think that although people might have an idea of what some part of it is, they really don't understand the whole big picture and where it comes from. So, here at Bulk Goodly, we like to demystify these things. So I'm going to take you through the steps of not only, basic premise and background of what a brand or branding is, but, how I'll give you some technical things like how we would help a client come up with choosing a brand name, the creative process that goes into it, as well as the technical part of establishing yourself under that brand. So let's jump right into it. Okay, so let's start off with what is a brand? Well, in its most simplistic form, if you look it up just by definition, a brand is some kind of product manufactured by a company that has a specific name. And that really goes to the roots of where a brand comes from, where way back in the day, farmers or people who used to raise livestock would take an iron brand and they would literally brand the cow with the logo of the ranch so that people literally knew whose cow that was. So, when you fast forward into the 21st century and you start talking about big tech companies and all the brands that like Coca-Cola and Google and Apple and Microsoft, brands represent those companies, but from where it stems way back, that's all that it was really supposed to do, right? Is it's a way for you to tell one person's cow apart from another person's cow. So I'm going to take you through what we do here at Bulk Goodly when we're either consulting a client on coming up with a brand or a brand name, or just trying to help them along the way with the brand that they have right now. So the first thing, whenever somebody comes up with like a product or something, a lot of times we'll get a business, or let's say it's some kind of a startup or something, and they've already come up with a product and now they want to come up with the name. Well, coming up with a name isn't that easy. It's actually a pretty daunting task, and to try to think that one person could just come up with a name off the top of their head after they've come up with this idea, especially if it's a really big idea, it's probably not going to go down like that. So what we have is a creative process that combines a technical process of how to go through that with your company, whether it's one person or it's a team of 10, 20, or 100, that will help you establish your brand and come up with a good name to choose from. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to define the rules that your organization is going to use to pick the brand name, potentially the logo, and how you're going to define it. Now, one thing I want you to keep in mind is that when you're doing this and you're going through this exercise, all a brand is the experience that a customer has when they engage with you. So I'll give you an example of what that looks like. Let's say I'm talking about a personal brand for myself and I'm a fitness instructor. Then the experience that I want a customer to go through, or what I want them to have with me, is that they experience great results in their fitness as a result of working with me, if that's what my brand represents. So a great way to do that, and a real simple exercise that you can go through, is start out with a sentence that really defines and explains what the brand is and potentially what it does. So for Bulk Goodly, as an example, our slogan is "We tell stories that matter." Now, that defines our brand because we're a digital marketing company, and when it comes to marketing and great marketing campaigns, it really breaks down, at least for us, for storytelling and our ability to tell stories that matter for the client so it can drive, more customers, more clients, more sale of more products, etc. Okay, so now that you have that sentence and you feel like you've captured the essence of your brand, now you got to come up with a name. And this is the hard part. So I've tried to break this down as simply as possible as far as different variations that you can find the name from. And I have it broken down into 7 categories. The first one is eponymous names, and that is literally where, my last name's Wolf, so if I wanted to start a company, I would call it, Wolf Ventures. Strangely enough, I do have a subsidiary called Wolf Ventures, so that is an eponymous name. Other examples would be like Dell, for example, named after Michael Dell. Now, it's a computer company, but it's really just named after him, so that's the first variation. The second one is acronymic names. And what I mean by acronymic names is acronyms, right? So you take maybe a direct descriptive name of a business and you make an acronym for it. So for example, first that comes to mind is HSBC, which is Hong Kong Shanghai Bank. And that's kind of a tongue twister. And so if you've got a really long phrase or like a really long descriptive phrase, maybe you're breaking down ideas, maybe try using an acronym variation so you could have a very short version of it without having it be 3 sentences long to explain what it is. So for a quick example, if Bulk Goodly wanted to use an acronymic version of it, it would go from Bulk Goodly to just simply BG with a logo. The next variation is descriptive names. Now, the descriptive name is where the name of the company tells you exactly what it does. So a good example would be like 1-800-Flowers, right? You call a number, they deliver flowers to your house. Now, with 300 million companies that are out there and brands that exist, it's tending to be more difficult these days to find that kind of descriptive brand name because there's only so many words in the English dictionary and you might be out of it. So let's move on, because don't worry, if you can't come up with a direct descriptive name, there's other choices that you have. So the next variation is suggestive names. And suggestive names are part real, they're innovative, and they might be composite. So best example that comes to mind is Netflix, right? Netflix, when you think of it, right, let's separate everything that we know about Netflix and let's pretend that we didn't know what Netflix actually does. What it invokes is, the idea that it's something that has to do with the internet and flicks, right? So a flick is a slang word for a movie, right? And Netflix, which used to be a company that started by sending DVDs in the mail, has transformed into one of the largest streaming giants in the entire world. The way that the brand works is that that's the experience that they created, and that experience that created is what assigns value and what assigns what people think about when they hear the word Netflix, right? So if you could disassociate the name from what they actually do or what you know them to be now, then a suggestive name might be a really great way to have your brand kind of bend and fold over time as it grows up or as it changes and it morphs into new things. So Netflix is one of the best examples that I could think of for a suggestive brand name, and it might be a great way to future-proof your brand from without needing to change it later. Okay, next on the list is associative brand names. So best example that I would come up with is Amazon. Amazon actually does a lot of things with their brand, but the idea is that it's associating the brand's name with the Amazon River, which is a large encapsulating river where everything flows in one certain direction. And so associative names is a great way to explain, at least in an abstract type way, what your brand wants to be associated with. So for example, SpaceX. It's a little descriptive, but it's also explaining that it does stuff with space, but it's associating whatever it makes, whatever it produces, whatever experience a customer or client might have with going to space. So those are associative names. Okay, so next is invented or abstract names. So it's kind of a two-part category, but let's start with invented names. Some good examples are Xerox or Sony or Kodak, and these are all huge brands that and you know exactly what they do, but before the brand actually assigned them meaning, those words, you couldn't find them in the dictionary. They had absolutely no meaning. And so inventing a word might be a good way to go, especially if you have something really abstract or unique where it would be hard to find any kind of descriptive name for what you guys do to begin with. The next is just an abstract use of those names, which could be a real word or a variation of a composite word. So let's just use Apple, for example. Now, when I say Apple, right, what most people think is they immediately go to thinking of a computer. Well, before Apple actually became a computer company, if you said that back in 1976 or before they were actually established, if I said the name of my company was called Apple, most would think that I probably produced apples. So if you use an abstract variation of a name, you could literally take an inanimate object or something that has absolutely nothing to do with your company, service, or product, and assign it meaning based on the products that you create and the customer experience that you are inventing. And the final category would just be non-English names. So again, there's only so many words that are in the English dictionary, and if you're trying to create a brand that is really descriptive, you might have to use some kind of invented word or some composite word to make up something that has to do with your brand. So another way to go is just create a non-English name. Some examples are like Bacardi rum or Gucci. Everybody's heard of Gucci. Basically, any kind of word that's non-English where you could use a variation of it would work just as well, but again, you have to be careful. So when you go, you don't want to get too far off the reservation, because unless you're literally just inventing something, you might want to have it have something to do with your brand, or at least capturing the essence of it. So those are the 7 different variations of how you come up with a name. So by now, you have all the tools that you need to sit down, create some rules, right, of how you're going to go about this. Define what the brand is actually going to do and what type of response you're looking to invoke from your customers, how you want your customers to experience the brand. And now you have 7 different categories to choose from to try to figure out the name. Once you've got it, let's talk about the technical side of that. So once you come up, and I would say start brainstorming, and you're probably going to go through at least, let's call it 100 names before you guys decide on something, and then you can get into doing the logo. But you're probably going to have at least 10. Once you've got 10 names that you actually like, now it's time to go and do the research. First thing thing probably obviously would be just Google it. If you go Google it, see if you have any competitors or anybody out there that's actually using the name. The next, you're going to go to uspto.gov, which is the United States Patent and Trademark Office website. Run a quick search and make sure that no one's using that name. And if they are, you want to make sure that they're not using it, at least not in the category or, in the same kind of service product offering that your company is looking to create. Now, this is an important one because before you choose a name and go out and try to find a domain for it and grab all the different social media names and handles, you want to make sure and check with your legal counsel that you're not infringing on anybody's trademark. And it would be well worth, spending $600 or $700 on LegalZoom to make sure that nobody is using that name or a version of the trademark and logo. Okay, so that's it, guys. I just threw so much information at you, and I like to keep these videos as short as possible, but basically, I just gave you what we do over the course of like weeks in working with our clients. And a couple quick pro tips that I want to leave you with when you're going through this process of things that might hold you up, or, at least from my experience, what it comes down to is that you think that just because you can't get a domain name of the exact name, that may not mess you up. Because the way, just inherently how, search has changed over the years, the domain name may not be as important as long as you have a really good digital marketing company that could set you up with all the correct SEO and backlinks and whatnot that you need so people can find it. But a domain name really shouldn't be the make or break. There's a lot of different ways that you can get around using that domain name. In addition to that, just want to leave you with the fact that branding and coming up with the brand is it's like such a crucial part of, your company and like your process. A brand is not just a logo. A brand is not just a simple product or something like that. I mean, it literally is everything. And just looking around my desk, it's like, here's some Apple AirPods. Apple's a brand, AirPods is another brand within a brand, and it's the way that they use to market the product. Same with an Apple iPhone, or what else do I have here? A Hydro Flask, right? Just giving you the different names that we're using. It's kind of an abstract variation of a direct name, right? I'm sure that water bottle company wasn't available, so they had to get really creative with the way that they used their logo and the way that they came up with their name, Hydro Flask, in order to assign it meaning to become like a premium, dual insulated water bottle company. So your brand is the essence of everything that is going to be the story, the engagement with your customers, with your clients, with everything that you are going to become in the future is tied into your brand. So going through this process isn't something that should be taken lightly. I mean, clients pay us a lot of money to really sit down and help them with this because they know, and especially if you believe in your product and you believe that assigning a brand to it is going to be imperative and paramount to the success of it, you know how important this process is. So any help that you can get is absolutely important. And it's crucial, right, to the success of your enterprise. So, if you're thinking about this, you're going through it, you're struggling with it, that's all normal. This isn't something that should really be decided overnight. I really believe, and Bulk Goodly believes in really having a real collaborative process with everybody that matters in your company, coming up with the ideas of what define the brand, the brand name itself, and then even when it comes down to the logo, which I'll just have to cover in a different video because there's too much to go through. But listen, if you follow the steps that I gave you here today, and you follow them closely with your team, you'll walk away from that having a great understanding of what your product or service is, the type of experience that you want your customers to have, and a great idea as far as what you're going to call your company. If you have all those things, I promise you getting a logo for that is going to be the easy part of the process. So listen, I hope you got a lot out of this. You enjoyed the video. If you like what we are putting down all the time, please like and subscribe to us. Again, I want to thank you for checking this out. And this is Steve Wolf here from Bulk Goodly. I will see you next time.